We have a model that assumes that by 2050, this is very long term, that Bitcoin becomes a reserve asset that's used in global trade and held by global central banks at a very modest 2% weight. And in that model, we arrive at a $3 million price target for Bitcoin. Now, that sounds, extreme, but that's a 16% compound annual growth rate for a couple decades. That's not really that extreme. So into the millions over the medium term is a high conviction call.
What's going on, guys? K-Dub here with another episode of Crypto Zombie. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a great day today. And yes, Bitcoin did hit yet another all-time high. In fact, it's pretty crazy to think that you have Bitcoin hitting $108,000. You can see right here, which, by the way, this was what we had expected, right? Generally, these patterns usually break out at around 70%. We tried to do it here, and right at the very end, we came down, literally tested the absolute tip of it, and then that's where we started to move to the upside. So ultimately, this was bullish consolidation. There's a lot of people that are trying to call the tops, trying to say that, we're getting overheated, but what they don't realize is it is actually extremely different this time. That is kind of what I wanted to focus on this video. We could try to pick tops, we could try to figure out where Bitcoin is going. But with this US potential strategic reserve, it is insane, the 180 that you are seeing all of these original naysayers, these other countries. I mean, when I show you some of these clips today, it's going to be virtually impossible for you not to actually be bullish on Bitcoin. And I think the worst mistake that anyone could make today is not having some form of allocation. Obviously, I'm not saying go all in, but I do think that this will be one of those times where you would probably be kicking yourself if you choose to ignore it. And again, there's not really a lot of retail talking about it, right? If we come over here and we have a look, again, just looking at the simple, if we're just going to say Bitcoin's just going to do the same 4-year cycle, let's say nothing has changed, nothing is different. Well, you can see right here, we tend to put in a red candle followed by 3 candles, red candle followed by 3 green candles, red candle. So, I mean, you could see we're basically pushing up at the top of this candle right here, trying to literally put in a new all-time high again. So you have to ask yourself, what do you think is going to happen? If we have the 4-year cycles, or if you say it's broken, I mean, maybe we do get a bear market. We're going to get a bear market at some point, but maybe it's not going to be that 80%, 70%, 90% correction, I mean, we could go up to like 200,000 and crash down to, I don't know, 90,000, right? And then it would be over. That would be the end for Bitcoin. Imagine saying Bitcoin crashed from 200,000 to 90,000. Like, that sounds absolutely silly. And you can see if we are just looking at the 4-year cycle, it shows that there is a lot more potential for growth. And you can kind of see where we might be in relation to these previous cycles. Again, we had this perfect bounce between the 0.786 and 1, and I literally told you guys that you could probably have just sold here and bought back here if you wanted to make a quick trade. But, now that we're above it, we got to look at some of these higher areas, right? The 1.618 is around 135, and if we back out from this larger Fibonacci, that's around 155,000. And again, people say that sounds crazy, we can't do it. Yeah, well, ask someone 6 months ago if Bitcoin was going to be at 100,000, let alone above 100,000 by the end of this year. And I guarantee you they all would have said no, right? And just to show you really quick, we are maintaining bullish structure. We are holding on these daily EMA ribbons. And obviously, like I said, the worst is sometimes you come down here and, obviously they're expanding. You see they're expanding. So as they expand, the momentum is increasing, and now you're looking around a lower level of maybe 83,000, which is why I said these dips are for buying. You can try to time the top, you can try to buy down here, but again, you're swimming against the stream. It's like if the river is going this way, you're trying to swim against it. It's better to just literally just ride the wave. Essentially, I mean, look at this. I mean, just where could Bitcoin go in the short term? Well, we have $2.14 billion worth of shorts that could face liquidation at around 111,000. So that kind of tells me that that's probably a level we're going to go to relatively soon, because these markets don't like to be over leveraged. They tend to punish, a lot of the greedy traders and gamblers, etc., which is why I always say use low leverage, and the thing is like, if you have Bitcoin, here's something that a lot of guys don't tell you. You could just do a 2x. And hold spot. I mean, think about that. If you had, let's just say 1 Bitcoin, I don't know how many Bitcoin, whatever, and you just did 2x, you don't think we're going to get 50%? I mean, you can literally safely probably get a whole nother Bitcoin without having to really risk it. I mean, do you think we're going to crash 50% from these levels? We could. But I mean, I don't see us going down to 50,000 anytime soon. That's just like, short-term logic. And again, this is my main topic of today. And this is going to be a little bit of a longer video, so you're going to have to stick with me because I got a lot of stuff to talk about. I posted this over on X. Actually had a lot of traction. There was so many comments on this. Some people are trolls, but hey, whatever, to each his own. But Trump confirms Bitcoin reserve plans, $15 trillion price boom predicted. Now, who cares what Forbes has to say? But at the end of the day, 15 trillion, I'm not going to do the math. If you divide it by the total amount, 21 million, it's somewhere upwards of over 700,000. I don't know, 740,000 rough math for Bitcoin per coin. And that's just this, and we're still, not at the market cap of gold yet. And, I don't know if Jack Mallers knows something that we don't know. Maybe he had to sign an NDA. I know he does speak with some government officials. He says that there's a possibility that we could see this reserve in action on day one of the presidency.
And it's 1 million Bitcoin is the target. I also know Trump is looking at a day one executive order.
Sorry. Day one executive order for a Bitcoin reserve for the United States?
Yeah, but so I know that there's people looking at the Dollar Stabilization Act is it gives the president wide discrepancy to protect the dollar, and there's potential to use a day one executive order to purchase Bitcoin. It wouldn't be at the size and scale of 1 million coins, but it would be a significant position, and it'd be a message that the United States.
So again, this is going to be like the main topic of today. I have a ton of clips and a ton of charts and things that I want to show you guys. But before we do, I just want to give again a shout out to MetaSignals, because as you can see right here, we've actually been selling the NFTs a lot faster. They, for a while, it was kind of like, people were a little concerned about the price action. I think now that they're realizing the edge that MetaSignals has, and this is something I wanted to show you, this screenshot. So this is from the back end. This is, you'll get a dashboard if you sign up, but look at this. If you take the long side on the original strategy, and here is the actual back-tested data to 2020, because remember, we were testing this 3 years before we released this to the public. You could see that there were 224 signals, and obviously, they're not all winners, but, this was the test balance. Starting with 10,000, you would now have almost 70,000. So just simply following the alerts blindly would have gave you a 7x. Now, obviously, I don't recommend doing that, okay? Obviously, this is just a companion to your charts that you're doing. But it's clearly working. So if you guys are interested, I'm not trying. Obviously, you guys know, like, I am invested in this company. It is something that I help. I didn't really build it, but I watched it, and it's really the best signals. I think the best signals out there personally. That's why I stand by it. So if you guys want, there's a link below in the description for that. I do stand by it. I don't want to. I don't believe in scamming anybody. I don't believe in shilling tokens to anybody. It's just a very good product, and it has a proven track record. So check it out for yourself. It's got a free Discord. So anyway, look at this. This is the gold versus Bitcoin chart right here. And as you could see, obviously there were some issues with us breaking this peak right here. I know this looks like the dollar chart, but this is actually gold versus Bitcoin. And as you could see, again, right here, we just retested on this gold chart. We tested it actually for about 4 weeks in a row, and finally we bounced off of it. So again, this is just, Peter Schiff can say what he wants, but Bitcoin is still the better store of value than gold. In fact, Dan Morehead was over saying that the US stores $600 billion in gold, and he's saying you should just go to digital gold because it's much better.
I think that is actually a really important thing. When you're the reserve currency of the world, you don't have somebody else's currency to save in. So the United States doesn't have another currency. It stores $600 billion in gold, which is a staggering amount. It's equivalent to 11 million years of American worker wages. So that's kind of crazy. Go to digital gold. Bitcoin is much better. And so I do think it's totally rational. The U.S. already owns 1% of the world's Bitcoins. Keep that, increase that. So I do think it is actually a really good policy. There's a couple countries that already do own Bitcoin. It'd be great for the U.S. to get out in the lead.
VanEck CEO even believes that it's possible for Bitcoin to hit 7 figures, which would be $1 million potentially in 2 years.
Well, going back to the game theory, when we have other nations looking at potentially creating Bitcoin strategic reserves, and we have had such bullish rhetoric from President Trump, is it possible that if they decide to do something, that Bitcoin could just skyrocket and hit, I don't know, 7 figures in the next 2 years?
It's always possible because the supply is very constrained. So if gold demand 10x'd over the next year, suddenly there'd be a lot more gold that you would find in supply, right? I think China just announced that they found like some $1 trillion gold reserve. El Salvador's talking about $1 trillion gold reserve. Costs a lot of money to dig that stuff out of the ground. Often higher prices are the catalyst to make it affordable. Bitcoin's not like that. So, you know, I wouldn't say never, but I think a 10x in 2 years, it's beyond what my expectations would be.
Now, you might be asking yourself, where is this money coming from, right? Because retail is kind of crickets right now. I've had a few people reach out to me, but nothing like it was previously. I actually was a little bit wrong because I thought once we hit 100K, more people would have started paying attention. I don't know if it's because they got burned in the FTX crash, or maybe they're just not paying attention. They don't care, you know. But again, you really should be paying attention, because here is just an example. This is the European MP saying that Donald Trump is going to create a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Bitcoin is skyrocketing. The EU is squandering our money. And she tells the parliament to set up a strategic Bitcoin reserve. This is actually, I believe, originally in French, but they did AI over it to have her speak English. But this was a real conversation.
3 years ago, across the Atlantic, the president of El Salvador decided to invest in Bitcoin for his country. At the time, he was ridiculed by the political class and the IMF. He now shows a 100% return, with hundreds of millions of dollars available for his people, for security, and for the sovereignty of his country. The whole world is now getting ready to take advantage of this revolution in decentralized finance. Donald Trump is going to create a strategic reserve of Bitcoin for the United States. Jerome Powell, the chairman of the US Federal Reserve, is now talking about digital gold. Bitcoin is skyrocketing. And what about the European Union? What is the European Union doing? It's squandering our money on unbelievable waste. It continues to accumulate tragically inflationary deficits. It insists on regulating, taxing, and holding back. It's time to change the paradigm. It's time to protect our people from inflation and the poor economic choices of our states. It's time to say no to the totalitarian temptations of the European Central Bank, which wants to impose a fully controlled digital euro. We don't want this dystopian world where a European bureaucrat could tomorrow ban us from certain transactions and even kick us out of the banking system with a click, just for something we said on social media or for an opinion that doesn't sit well. It's time to bet on freedom. It's time for our states to invest in Bitcoin to build national strategic reserves. It's time to develop the mining industry. We, the French, hold the cards with our nuclear advantage. Let's stop taxing cryptocurrency holders more and more. It's their intelligence, their risks, their sleepless nights that have built their savings. Let's allow them to protect themselves from the crazy spiral you've created. Public deficit that drives money creation, which creates inflation, leading to chaos. Let's dare to be free. Let's stop being afraid of our own shadow. Let's stay true to the ambition of our civilization. Thank you.
So that's pretty crazy to hear that over, French Parliament. I mean, these are like, very important countries, so to speak, right? Not to say El Salvador isn't, but now you're starting to get into those like, the US, the UK, things like that. And, like Ali pointed out, look, we do have long-term holders that are starting to sell. So this could be a bit of a warning that maybe within the next couple of months or so, we could experience some form of a correction. I'm not saying that we're just going to go up forever, right? Bitcoin is known for 20%, 30% crashes. It happens all the time. It's just that the momentum right now is to the upside. And just an example of countries that either are actually buying Bitcoin or have made statements that they are considering buying Bitcoin. Not to mention that we already have Texas, Pennsylvania, and Florida, just in the US alone, saying that they're going to buy Bitcoin either way. You have USA, Russia, China, Japan, UAE, Brazil, India, Canada, El Salvador, Egypt, South Africa, Saudi Arabia. Okay, so that's just the people that we know now that are considering doing this. Why would they be making such a fuss? Why would they be talking about it if they weren't at least considering it? What would be their self-interest to pump Bitcoin, on some false narratives or something like that? And the other thing is the supply shock that I don't think a lot of people are going to understand is that if you look at the total OTC desk balances, they are literally falling as the price is rising. So the available Bitcoin, Simple 101 is coming down, right? And the demand is going up. And there is a lot of demand. I'll show you in a minute. But here's another example. So is this, I believe this is, all right, I don't know if this is translated. You might have to actually turn on your screen and read this. But former German finance minister Christian Lindner publicly criticizes the Chancellor Olaf Scholz for failing to incorporate Bitcoin into Germany's financial strategy. He cites the USA as an example of taking the lead with crypto-friendly policies.
Liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, nichts habe ich davon gehört, was in der Welt passiert, welche Innovationen es gibt, die an Deutschland vorbei stattfinden. Nicht beim Bundeskanzler, nicht beim Wirtschaftsminister, nicht beim Oppositionsführer habe ich gehört, dass in den USA jetzt eine neue kryptofreundliche Politik ins Werk gesetzt wird und dass die USA die Vorteile, die wir auch haben könnten bei Bitcoin, jetzt längst überholen wollen. Und ich höre nichts davon in einer zentralen Debatte des Deutschen Bundestages. Welch Versäumnis, welche Chancen gehen uns verloren.
And we had been talking for a very long time that at one point during some presidential election, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies were going to become a central talking point. And people laughed and said, nobody cares about Bitcoin. It's not a topic that anybody considers. And yet, if you think about it, the pro-Bitcoin president was the one who actually won, against what all the odds and against what all the, news stations were saying. And, Mark Cuban, he flip-flops and gropes all over the place. But he admits that, until the Democrats realize that Bitcoin is the ultimate form of economic populism, expect them to keep losing elections.
At least 40% of young men were into crypto. You've got a SEC head, Gary Gensler, doing everything possible to reduce the value of their net worth, and everything they read in those apps about, what's happening to the price of their crypto is, driven and talked about relating to Gary Gensler. They're not going to vote for you. And I said it to Gary Gensler directly. I said it to Kamala. I said it to her team that Gary Gensler could cost her the election.
We want a forward-thinking economy. We want to embrace things like AI and Bitcoin, right? We don't want to get left in the dust. The United States embraced the internet, and thank goodness they did, because it allowed them to really be at the forefront of that explosive, literally life-changing technology. Let's be honest, without the internet, we wouldn't be doing this right now, right? I don't know. You'd have to sign up for some, a letter, and I would be, writing and putting charts in a book that you would have some kind of subscription for or something like that. But, again, let's just talk about the money. Let's talk about the money. Willy Woo says in the last 30 days, we've seen more than $3 billion per day entering the Bitcoin network. All right. This is an incredible spike right here, by the way. And another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that FTX, now I was not involved in FTX. We never promoted FTX on this channel. It was never anything I talked about. I always felt weird about this exchange. Not gonna lie, it always rubbed me the wrong way. But unfortunately, some people got burned, and apparently they are going to begin distributing $12 billion worth of, they're saying, stable coins. Now, these are people that lost their money. They were in crypto. They probably got liquidated, not by choice, at a much lower price. So there are some people that are just going to walk away. They're going to take the money and run and just say, hey, I'm glad I got my money back. But I also think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to get back in the game. I do. And I think $12 billion worth of stable coins coming into the market, it's going to create a lot of gunpowder, so to speak, to sort of ignite the next move. So getting back to another chart of Willy Woo's, he points out the first great supply shock right here. And you could see that this was after massive consolidation. Actually, it was a bit of a bear market. And then Bitcoin continued to go up essentially for 2 years. And then you had our second supply shock right here. And you can kind of see Bitcoin continued to go up for about 8 months, 9 months after that. So, even if we don't go a year, 2 years, the supply shock is currently happening. In fact, this is the lowest levels since about 2019 on exchanges, and yet the demand is higher, the price is higher. So again, what do you actually think is going to happen? And I think like Jack Mallers was speaking to Tim Pool over at Timcast, talking about the fact that basically, you have good money and you have bad money. And, you know, Gersham's law says bad money drives out good money, right? In the idea that if you're going to save in something, or if you have a choice of spending something, like if you go to the store and I want to buy some groceries and they offer me to pay in either Bitcoin or dollars, why would you pay in Bitcoin knowing that that is going to appreciate? You would want to get rid of the dollars as fast as possible. And that's the Ponzi scheme, essentially, that a lot of people are waking up to.
Really, for me, it's no man should work for what another man can print. And so I don't do dollars strictly out of just principle. Yeah. I will not live my life and contribute my time and energy for what another man can print. The properties money needs, scarcity is the most important, but it needs to be saleable and liquid. You need to be able to exchange it at any point for whatever you need. You need to have liquidity. It needs to be divisible. It's a measuring instrument in an economy. It needs to be able to measure a grain of sand or a professional sports team. So it needs to be able to scale to any transaction size. It needs to be portable. I got to be able to move it. I need to be able to verify its authenticity. If I can't tell the difference between a fake and a real one, these are the properties that define if a money is a good technology to solve the problem. I'll tell you where gold failed. Gold failed when you want a digital economy of billions of people. You were reliant on a central party, corporation, or government to achieve transaction finality. When gold was physical in the local, I went to the local butcher, gave him a gold coin. I went to the local tailor, gave him a gold coin, and it was peer-to-peer. Gold was fine. As soon as we scaled the world to billions and we were on the internet, I have to deposit my gold to the government and trust that Bitcoin is digital gold in this. It's not only a physical bearer instrument, but it's a network. It's a network that can achieve transaction finality without the central party. That's why it's better.
I know this is a little cliche to say, but you really need to just think about it. The U.S. dollar system is a Ponzi scheme.
And I do feel bad because there were a lot of critics, especially when Bitcoin crashes in the bear market. There are people that get burned. And, you know, Joe Kiernan, I don't even know who this guy is, but, you know, he calls him out to this guy. And, you know, these were some of the things that people were saying. They were talking about this, you know, on crypto, like it's going to zero or it's not worth anything, right?
Tom Leon, earlier he's great, smart guy, stock analyst, thinks Bitcoin's going to 200,000. So we have, you know, Kathy Wood, BlackRock wants to have an ETF, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, Paul Tudor Jones, Stan Druckenmiller.
Sure.
And just across the board. It didn't take me long to understand how the unbanked could benefit from this. And I also understand the distributed ledgers, and I understand it was only, I mean, I didn't, you say you did a deep dive. It only took me about 20 pages of the Bitcoin Standard to understand that this was probably something that, do you think all these firms are going to have egg on their face?
So the democratized, decentralized future of money is brought to you by BlackRock?
I don't know. Maybe. They may. I mean, if they think it's gold, if they think it's, you know,
that's why I was
digital gold.
Right, exactly. And that's why I was explaining the difference between
I heard that, but
and scarcity.
A lot of smart people are fooled by it. You think it's going to zero eventually?
No, that's like a. I mean, look,
where do you think it's going?
Story. I can't predict the future any more than anyone else, but I would say this.
You think it's going lower?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think eventually there will not be something called Bitcoin?
It's a story. It'll last as long as people believe in it.
And I really feel bad for anyone who actually listened to people like that. I mean, not that it matters, celebrity endorsements. I mean, take it with a grain of salt. But, you know, former Chicago Bears linebacker who apparently is now a trader, John Nigerian, I'm not familiar. I don't watch a lot of sports. I'm much more of a crypto guy, so I probably said his name wrong. He says, I think Bitcoin triples from here on the Charles Schwab network.
This is something that I think has a lot more legs. 62,000 before we get a crypto-friendly administration. That's Bitcoin, of course. Now we're over 100,000. So I think the sky is really the limit. I mean, when some of these guys put out predictions like 200,000, 500,000, 13 million in the case of Michael Saylor, I think, some of those numbers are astronomically high, but some of them are achievable because we've never had this support before.
Sure.
We got to 62,000 on Bitcoin, 72 really, I guess, before we had any support. And now you've got real support, perhaps even a strategic coin reserve, if you will. So I think Bitcoin probably triples from here under this president. And I don't mean by January, but I mean over these 4 years.
Okay.
I think it's going to just keep going.
So again, it's all about the long-term horizon. You know, Van Eck was back over here on Market Alert, and he's saying that, you know, if Bitcoin becomes a reserve asset that is held by central banks at 2%, then, and that's not a lot. 2% is not very much at all when you consider it, that in that model, we get a $3 million Bitcoin.
We have a model that assumes that by 2050, this is very long term, that Bitcoin becomes a reserve asset that's used in global trade and held by global central banks at a very modest 2% weight. And in that model, we arrive at a $3 million price target for Bitcoin. Now, that sounds, you know, extreme, but that's a 16% compound annual growth rate for a couple decades. You know, that's not really that extreme. So into the millions over the medium term is a high conviction call.
One other thing I wanted to touch on, because I know that I didn't get a chance to put out a video when everyone was like freaking out about Willow, right? The new quantum computer thing. So Bitcoin has a lot of fail safes in it. Number one, there is a difficulty adjustment that literally protects it from attacks on the network. So let's say that someone could, like, for example, try to attack the network and mine all the Bitcoin by using the, I don't know, the advanced quantum computing. Well, that would make the difficulty so unbelievably hard because it would adjust. You see what I'm saying? So there's that. And then there's also, about like seed phrases and people's wallets. Well, still, again, you know, for example, Adam Beck, he is old OG proof of work algorithm creator, and he says you can't increase entangled qubits by writing lots of 105 qubit chips. We are not remotely close to 1 million qubit computers this decade, or likely next either. So look, nobody's saying that we could never get to that point. I mean, you remember back in the 1950s and people had, you know, literally refrigerator-sized computers that do less work than what our phone does in our pockets. So anything is possible. It's just right now, it's not a concern. And, you know, Bitcoin Core, obviously, they work on stuff like this. They, you know, so I'm not worried about that, but there's always going to be FUD. There's always going to be FUD. So getting to the charts again, guys, I wish I had more technical analysis to go over, but we are in price discovery. We're holding nicely on the Market Cipher A bands, and we do have money flow continuing to the upside. You know, again, this was our target at 102,000, and we did pull back down to the 0.786. So again, our next levels are 1.618 at 135 and 155. Now, the absolute peak of the market, if we're going to go into blast off territory for me, would probably be around $242,000 per coin. And that would be the like ultimate super not as likely, but crazy scenario top. Okay. The more realistic areas are around 155 to 209. Anything higher than 209,000, you're definitely getting into potential bear market territory. But again, you know, just let's just, you know, just devil's advocate here. You know, Bitcoin goes up to 209, you know, a 50% crash brings you back to 103. So you basically end up right where we are today, which would be a great accumulation opportunity, I would say, if you don't have enough allocation to it, you know, and just keeping the charts clean, you know, getting all the indicators off. We've been in this channel ever since back here in August of 2022. The more likely scenario is we come up here and we at least touch the top of this channel, right? So short term, that's 120. Now, then we could have a pullback, right? We could come back down to 95 even, you know, before continuing to the upside. I mean, we could also come all the way down to the bottom, you know, but keep in mind, by the time that happens, you're not going to get a straight crash like this. You're going to, I'm just making this up. You're going to get something like this, maybe bounce around here, and then you come down, right? So and it might even try to retest, you know, this area right here, which again would bring Bitcoin down to about 80,000, which I said is probably the lowest we're going to see Bitcoin go in this cycle, unless we just start literally crashing today. So like you can put buy orders at around the $80,000 area. It's just sitting around and waiting for that and hoping that you're going to get that price. I just don't know that that's going to happen anytime soon because there's just too much bullish momentum. I mean, you know, creating these anchor waves and trigger waves to the top, giant cup and handle barely just broke out of it, you know, massive. Look at this. This is like the major trend, the major parallel channel. This has been going on since April of 2017. Okay. And I don't want to hear we're going to go down because look, we've been hanging down here. We hung down here. I'll tell you how long we hung down here for. Literally, about 924 days. Okay. So yeah, we had our bear market, guys. I mean, I know people have PTSD, but the more likely scenario is coming up here somewhere, and maybe that tags, around that $255,000 area. And then maybe we do have a correction back down to the bottom. But, at that point, if we just kind of like extend this out even farther, going something up like here, that we have a massive crash, because keep in mind, these things don't crash, they crash kind of slowly, maybe we come back down here and then, oh my God, bear market bottom at 95,000, something like that. That's kind of like a bit of a projection of what we could expect. But before we go, I just wanted to also say something. If you are holding Bitcoin and you're serious about self-custody, I am someone who has literally actually been like debanked. Like I've actually had banks not want to work with me because they know like cryptocurrency is involved, and Chokepoint 2.0 is a real thing. Like maybe not for just average people, although Coinbase has been restricting a lot of accounts. So, if I would just not trying to shill an exchange, but I would suggest something a little like Kraken, if you can get, that, or Gemini. Coinbase is a little weird, but, the banking system that was built by us for us is being used against us. And this was basically Cynthia Lummis saying that Donald Trump is going to put a stop to this.
What's going on here, and can it be changed?
Well, just as there has been lawfare at the Justice Department, Operation Chokepoint 2.0 has been so much bigger than many of us knew. So I was so glad that Mark Andreessen got on Joe Rogan's program and blew it up. And then you had all kinds of people who've been debanked get on X and explain what debanking has done to their businesses. It could be a gun manufacturer, it could be a marijuana business, it could be an oil and gas producer, and it's definitely been crypto assets. They have illegally, and I mean this government, our government has illegally gone after an industry and tried to snuff it out through the regulatory state, through the bureaucracy. And this is something that I'm so pleased President Trump is going to stop. Just as Kash Patel will go into the FBI and do away with the warfare, President Trump is putting people in place at the FDIC and Treasury and elsewhere in his government who can make sure this industry can flourish in the United States with transparency and consumer protection.
Yeah. So there are certainly a lot of things to be excited about. Yes, you're going to find people that are just trying to call the tops on Twitter. They're going to be smart asses about it. They're going to be trolls. Okay, great. So maybe one day one of you are correct and you call the exact top. Congratulations. Like, if you're in it just for the clout and you don't understand Bitcoin, then fine, trade it. But really, the best play has been to buy and hold. It has been the store of value, right? If you do want to trade, one of the exchanges that I really like is Blowfin. They have really good liquidity. That is where, I currently am at the moment. But yeah, I mean, it's up to you guys. If you want, there's a link below for that. But ultimately, I think the strategy is really just buy, hold. Again, MetaSignals, if you guys are interested, they have really good signals. The momentum is most likely to the upside right now. So it's pretty, I don't want to say it's like easy because there's still people that are going to get wrecked in these markets, but that's because you're using way too high of leverage. Let's be honest. If you're using anything like 3 to 5, you should be fine. You should be able to make consecutive winning trades at this part of the market, okay? But obviously be safe out there. If you guys do want to learn how to trade, check out my tutorials popping up right here, right now. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Like I said, DCA, look at the bigger picture. These nation states, they're coming out. It's a full 180 of what we've ever seen before. So, I don't know. Unfortunately, I have to remain the bulltard for a little bit because that's kind of where we're at. So until next time, guys, stay crypto. I love you. And of course, peace out.